The night opened inside the roaring AT&T Center in San Antonio, Texas. Lights pulsing, cameras circling, and a kind of pressure in the air that only two undefeated punchers can create. The event was Knockout Kings 2, a fitting title because the crowd knew they were not here for a chess match or a technical showcase. They were here for destruction. And at the center of it all stood two men from opposite sides of the world, driven by the same hunger. Keith "one-time" Thurman, the hard-hitting Floridian with a reputation for detonating fights early, marched to the ring with the swagger of a man who felt destiny pressing against his shoulders. He was the prodigy built in the gym of the late Ben Getty, molded from adolescence into a weapon of controlled violence. Across from him stood Diego La Hoya Chavez of Argentina, a rugged, expressionless warrior with a granite chin and a background shaped by discipline, struggle, and a love for combat, born long before the lights ever found him. Tonight, neither man came to box safe. They came to test something deeper, each other's willpower, durability, and threshold for chaos. As the announcer's voice thundered across the arena, "Ladies and gentlemen, here is the hard-hitting and undefeated Keith, one-time Thurman." The place shook with applause. Moments later, with equal electricity, he introduced the undefeated Diego Chavez, and the Argentinian crowd pockets roared back in defiance. When the opening bell rang, it wasn't just a fight beginning. It was a collision of ambitions, a battle between two hitters who believed that one clean shot could rewrite their careers. And as round one unfolded, the energy felt less like a boxing match and more like a fuse burning toward an explosion no one could predict. From the moment the bell echoed, the violence began with no hesitation. Thurman, true to his word, attempted the early chin check. Stepping in with sharp jabs and a counter left hook he used like a trap. But Chavez immediately answered with a thudding right hand, a warning that he had not traveled across continents to be intimidated. The first round became a test of pride. Both men ripping body shots, both refusing to give ground, both digging into their arsenals with complete confidence in their own power. Chavez, the former soccer player with freakish core strength, sank left hooks into Thurman's ribs that made the commentators gasp. Thurman responded by stepping around the pocket, firing his own left hook, a move reminiscent of Argentine legend Sergio Martinez. The crowd could feel it. This wasn't a feel-out round. This was two men trying to break each other early. By round two, the firefight intensified. Chavez's right hand found the mark several times, pushing Thurman backward, forcing him to momentarily retreat to the ropes. Thurman, breathing through what would later be revealed as a damaged nose, kept discipline, moving laterally, countering off missed hooks. The bodywork from both sides was fierce, punches that slapped against ribs echoing beneath the arena lights. Chavez sensed small moments of weakness, stepping forward with violent intentions. But Thurman's athleticism and countershots kept him honest. Through the first 3 rounds, it became a tug-of-war between aggression and survival, between who could impose their will more consistently. And as the commentary team talked about strategy, conditioning, and layoff rust, the truth became clear. Neither fighter came here to coast. They were laying down the bricks of a war that was only beginning to escalate, and the fans could feel tension building like a storm waiting to break. By rounds 3 and 4, the battle transformed from reckless exchanges into something more tactical, yet equally violent. Chavez pressed more deliberately, cutting off the ring, digging to the body with persistence. He backed Thurman to the ropes, firing combinations that forced the American into defensive shells. Thurman's nose was leaking, his breathing adjusting, but his mind remained razor-sharp. He began boxing more intelligently, using his underrated footwork, pivoting, sliding, stepping off angles, forcing Chavez to reset again and again. Still, the Argentinian refused to slow down. his poker face never cracked. Whether he was hit with a jab, a counterhook, or a right hand, his expression remained cold, emotionless, predatory. The commentators described this phase as intriguing because the fight was starting to divide into small, strategic battles. Thurman using speed and precision, Chavez relying on pressure and body work. The fifth and sixth rounds became chess under fire. Every time Thurman landed a sharp right hand, Chavez answered with a left hook to the ribs. Every time Chavez surged forward with a combination, Thurman slipped, countered, or circled out with just enough space to force hesitation. And yet, beneath all of it, something else was happening. Thurman was studying patterns, Chavez's rhythm, his entries, his favorite shot sequences. And as the rounds passed, the American began outlanding the Argentinian, little by little stealing momentum with accuracy rather than brute force. The fight was close, razor close, but Thurman's intelligence was beginning to surface. The storm was no longer a wild exchange. It was a timed pressure cooker, waiting for one man to make a mistake big enough to change everything. As rounds 7 and 8 arrived, the crowd sensed both fighters entering the heart of the war, where fatigue creeps in, where power fades, and where willpower becomes the only currency that matters. Chavez opened the 7th with renewed aggression, snapping Thurman's head back with a clean right hand. Thurman fired back instantly, landing one of the biggest shots of the fight, a right hand that staggered Chavez for a split second, though the Argentinian refused to show it on his face. They exchanged heavy shots at mid-range, both digging to the body, both refusing to back down. The rounds were nearly impossible to score. Every time Thurman landed clean, Chavez responded with equal violence. By now, both fighters' punch numbers were nearly identical. The arena could feel the tension of a fight that was still dangerously winnable for either man. In the 8th round, Chavez found a pocket of success, landing a clean combination that forced Thurman to reset and regroup. But Keefe, even with the nose damage affecting his breathing, used sheer grit to maintain his rhythm. He jabbed more, slipped more, circled more, forcing Chavez to chase him into counters. The fight narrative was clear. Thurman was becoming the more intelligent fighter, the more adaptable fighter, but Chavez remained the more stubborn warrior, marching forward, daring Thurman to break him. And yet beneath all that aggression, Chavez was beginning to slow. Not visibly, not dramatically, but just enough that Thurman's sharper punches were starting to beat him to the mark. The commentators debated swing rounds, pivotal moments, and the razor-thin margins between them. The war was reaching its boiling point, and everyone knew a massive change was coming. Round 9 became the moment the entire fight pivoted. Both fighters entered with determination, but Thurman carried a different look, a sharpness, a readiness, a recognition that Chavez was beginning to fray around the edges. Chavez pushed forward with desperation, his shots looping wider, his movements heavier. Thurman began placing precise combinations, jabs to the head, right hands down the middle, and most importantly, left hooks to the body. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, the Argentinian began reacting. He blinked more. He stepped backward more. He clinched for the first meaningful time in the fight. The commentators noticed it. The crowd noticed it. And Thurman noticed it most of all. With under a minute left in the round, he ripped a perfectly timed left hook straight into Chavez's liver. A shot delivered with the precision of a surgeon and the power of a hammer. Chavez dropped to one knee, his face twisting with pain for the first time all night. It was only the 3rd knockdown of his entire career, and this one was brutally clean. He rose on unsteady legs, breathing deep, trying to mask the agony radiating through his torso. Thurman, smelling blood, advanced with cold focus, firing more body shots, more jabs, more combinations. Chavez survived the round, but the damage was irreversible. The Argentinian warrior had tasted something no conditioning drill could prepare him for. A liver shot that broke rhythm, pride, pain, or insult, and stability all at once. As he went back to the corner, His team urged him to fight through it, but his breathing told the truth. The momentum had shifted. The fight was no longer even. Thurman had turned the war into a hunt. The 10th round began with a sense of inevitability, a heaviness that spread across the entire arena. Chaves stepped forward bravely, but his body betrayed him. His movements were slower, his guard looser, his footing no longer steady. Thurman, now in complete control, pressed forward with a champion's instinct, firing combinations upstairs and downstairs with surgical accuracy. Every punch seemed to push Chaves closer to collapse. The crowd roared as Thurman cornered him again, digging right hands to the ribs, then upstairs with sharp hooks. Chaves tried to respond, tried to summon the same ferocity he'd carried through earlier rounds, but the energy simply wasn't there. He was fighting on heart alone, and heart can only carry a fighter so far. With Chavez trapped along the ropes, Thurman unleashed a vicious final attack. Hooks, crosses, uppercuts, each punch layered with intention, each one landing cleaner than the last. Suddenly, Chavez crumbled under the pressure, falling to the canvas for the second time in the fight, and the fourth time in his professional career. This knockdown didn't look like a momentary stumble. It looked like surrender from a body that could no longer obey the mind's demand to stand. The referee took one look at Chavez, and that was it. He waved the fight off. After a savage, enthralling war, Keith one-time Thurman had done exactly what he promised. He stopped the undefeated Diego Chavez, claiming victory by knockout at just 28 seconds of the 10th round. The crowd rose to its feet as the announcement echoed, and the new interim WBA welterweight world champion, Keith, one-time Thurman. Confetti fell, the lights swirled, and Thurman raised his gloves toward the sky in the defining moment of his early career. This fight was more than a knockout. It was a declaration, a statement, a coronation of a man whose power, intelligence, and resilience shone brightest when the moment demanded greatness. Keith Thurman didn't just win, he arrived.